So you've shared some fascinating stuff with us about product management.
Yeah, it seems like we're about to really understand how great products are made and how they flourish.
Yeah.
So in this deep dive, we are going to look at the basic ideas behind product management
Okay.
and figure out why it's so important and see how it relates to other similar roles.
Okay.
Our mission today is to pull out those core concepts, really explain what they mean, and give you some practical and insightful stuff to take away.
Sounds good.
And right away, one of the most interesting things is this.
What's that?
Product management basically means guiding a product through its whole life,
Okay.
from the first idea to the very end.
Okay.
It's a role that watches over the entire process and makes sure it makes sense for the business.
Yeah, that's a really clear and accurate way to put it. It's not just about coming up with a fantastic product, it's about the whole journey.
Right.
And that business perspective you mentioned is absolutely key. It makes sure the product isn't only technically possible or looks good.
But it actually helps the company achieve its goals,
Yeah.
and it solves a problem that people really have.
Exactly. And when we look closer at what product management involves,
Yeah.
it's this process of making sure a product succeeds by getting all the different teams working together, engineering, marketing, sales, support, everyone.
Uh-huh.
It's about strategically planning the whole life of the product.
Right.
The product manager is the one who makes sure what's being developed really meets customer needs and fits in with the company's bigger plans.
Yeah.
And it's not just a one-time thing, right? They're there from the initial idea.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
From the first idea all the way to when the product is no longer needed.
Okay. So they are really a vital connector.
Yeah.
So you have these technical teams that are focused on building the product's features, and then the UX designers who are making it look good and be easy to use.
Right.
And then you've got the marketing team who is spreading the word about it, and the sales team that is getting people to use it. The product manager is the one who makes sure everyone's on the same page and working towards giving the customer something valuable in a way that helps the company's overall goals.
Exactly.
So why is product management so important in the first place? It sounds like it's a lot to manage.
It really is. It's super important because it's like a bridge between all those different departments we talked about.
Okay.
Without it, you risk teams working on their own, maybe creating products that are technically amazing but no one actually wants,
Right.
or marketing products that don't deliver what they promise.
Yeah.
Product management stops that from happening. It makes sure that the products are created and the strategies used to market them
Uh-huh.
actually meet customer needs and support the company's strategic objectives at the same time.
Right. And it sounds like they're involved in some pretty fundamental activities right from the get-go.
Definitely. Like understanding what the market actually wants.
Yeah. What are some of the ways they figure that out?
Well, market research is a big one, figuring out who your customers are, what their problems are,
Mm-hmm.
and what kind of solutions they're looking for. You know, one technique they use is called customer journey mapping.
Okay.
They really dive deep into the customer's experience to find any unmet needs they have at each point of interaction with the product or company.
Makes sense.
Then there's competitor analysis.
Okay.
That's where they figure out what solutions are already out there, what's good and bad about them, and where there might be opportunities to do something different. They might also use surveys, focus groups, and look at market trends to get the full picture.
Oh, wow. So it's about really understanding the landscape before even starting to build the product.
Yeah, exactly.
And then that deep understanding informs what they call the product strategy,
It does.
which is basically deciding what the product will be and who it's for, right?
Exactly. After they understand the market and customer needs,
Yeah.
they're very involved in planning the whole product development process. And they work closely with the tech teams to make sure the vision becomes reality.
And it's not just about how the product works underneath, is it?
No, definitely not.
One thing that stood out was their role in shaping how people actually use and interact with the product.
Absolutely. They're really important in introducing new and improved user experiences.
Okay.
They're like the link between the UX designers,
Uh-huh.
who focus on making it easy and enjoyable to use, the tech teams who make it work, and the business leaders who have the overall strategic vision.
So they're bringing all those perspectives together.
They are, to make sure the product is not only functional,
Right.
but also enjoyable to use and aligned with business goals.
It sounds like they're constantly keeping an eye on the market.
Yeah. And how the product is doing to make sure it stays relevant.
That's right.
They constantly monitor the product's performance. They track things like how many people are using it, customer satisfaction, and revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And based on this data, they make changes to the product roadmap and features to make sure it stays competitive and successful.
Right.
The market's always changing,
Yeah, it is.
and a good product has to change too.
So if you had to sum it up, what's the absolute core importance of product management?
Well, at its heart, product management defines what product success actually means.
Okay.
They set the strategic direction for the product, its long-term vision,
Mm-hmm.
the specific problems it aims to solve, and who it's for.
Right.
And they have to show the real impact of the product, both in terms of the value it gives to the customers
Yeah.
and how it contributes to the company's goals and financial health.
So they're kind of like the internal champion and strategist for the product.
Exactly, making sure everyone stays aligned,
Yeah.
especially when different teams might have different priorities.
Right. Especially in big organizations, you often have different stakeholders with different priorities, sometimes even competing priorities. The product manager is the central voice, advocating for the product's vision and making sure everyone understands why decisions are made.
Okay.
Ultimately, it's about driving company growth and making sure the company is profitable.
So good product management is not just a nice to have, definitely not. It's essential for any company that wants its products to do well in the long run.
This idea of a product having a life cycle seems really important.
It is.
It's not just made and then exists unchanged forever, right?
Right. It's rarely a straight line.
Mm.
Especially with these new agile methodologies.
Okay.
It's often a cycle of launching, learning from feedback,
Uh-huh.
and then improving the product. Along the way, you'll come up with new ideas, get feedback,
Yeah.
and find new groups of potential customers. All of that means the product has to adapt and change over time.
Okay, so can we walk through some of the key stages in this life cycle?
Sure.
It sounds like it starts with an initial spark or concept.
Yes. The first stage is also called the innovation stage.
Okay.
That's where new ideas come from through brainstorming, market analysis, or figuring out what customer needs aren't being met.
So it's all about discovery.
It is. It's about imagining the potential value for customers.
Okay.
If an idea looks promising, they decide to invest some resources to explore it further.
So you've got this promising idea. What's next?
Well, next is the analysis stage.
Okay.
This is where you really dig deep to see if there's actually a demand for your idea in the market.
Uh-huh.
You start outlining the key features and requirements for the product and building a case for why the company should invest more in developing it.
Hmm.
In big companies, this often leads to a formal business case that needs approval from senior management.
Makes sense. You need to get the green light to move forward.
Right.
And then the actual building of the product starts.
Yes, that's the development stage.
Okay.
This is where the product is designed, engineered, and tested. When it comes to software development, especially with agile methodologies,
Uh-huh.
this is often a cyclical process.
Yeah.
They have these things called sprints,
Right.
where they have lots of opportunities to incorporate feedback, and often before they start the big development sprints.
Yeah.
They'll talk to potential customers to make sure what they're building is actually what people want.
So it's not just building in a vacuum.
Definitely not.
Yeah. It's about constantly checking in and making sure they're on the right track.
Exactly.
Okay, the product has been built and tested. Now it's time to get it out to users.
Right, that's the go-to-market stage.
Okay.
This is all about preparing for the product launch. It includes things like beta trials, refining the product's message,
Mm-hmm.
and making sure the sales and marketing teams are ready to promote and sell it. The time frame for this stage can vary a lot.
Okay.
For industries with lots of regulations like pharmaceuticals or aerospace, it could take months.
Wow.
But for online software,
Right.
it could be just hours or even minutes.
That's a huge difference. So the product is launched and people are starting to use it. What happens next?
That's the in-life stage.
Okay.
Here, the focus is on selling the product, tracking its performance using those KPIs we mentioned before,
Right.
and fixing any problems that come up. It's important to note that during this stage, you might see new versions or updates,
Okay.
which would have gone through their own mini-cycle of those previous stages.
So the process kind of repeats itself on a smaller scale.
It does.
And eventually, every product reaches a point where it's no longer needed.
That's right. That's the end-of-life stage.
Okay.
This is when the product becomes obsolete, maybe because of new technology, changing market needs, or something else, and they decide to phase it out.
So throughout this whole life cycle,
Yes. Effective product management means constantly watching the market
uh-huh.
and adapting to any changes. That includes launching new products,
Mm.
but also finding ways to improve existing ones, maybe by reducing costs, making it last longer, or finding new ways to increase profits.
So managing this whole product life cycle is closely tied to achieving the bigger business goals.
Absolutely. The goal of effective product lifecycle management is to achieve key strategic objectives,
Okay.
like increasing revenue,
Mm.
making sure the company has the right mix of products, finding ways to reduce costs, and making sure customers are happy.
It sounds like it's about making sure the product contributes to the overall success of the business. And there was something called product lifecycle management, or PLM.
Yeah.
Is that the framework for managing all these stages?
It is. PLM is the strategic framework.
Mhm.
It's the set of tools, processes, and methods that are used to manage a product effectively through all those stages we talked about. It has 4 main goals:
Okay, what are they?
to improve the financial performance of products,
Uh-huh.
to reduce the time it takes to bring new products to market,
Okay.
to improve the quality and reliability of products, and to drive the business forward through innovation and relevance.
That's quite a lot. I also remember seeing something about sales time in connection with PLM.
Yeah.
What was that about?
Well, PLM can also be looked at in terms of how it affects sales time,
Okay.
which basically means how efficient PLM strategies are
Uh-huh.
and how they can influence the sales and success of a product throughout its life.
So it's about making sure the product sells well from beginning to end.
Exactly.
Now, let's talk about something that can be confusing. The difference between a product manager and a project manager.
Ah, yes.
They sound pretty similar, don't they?
They do, and that's why people get them mixed up. There might be some overlap in their skills,
Hmm.
but their main focus and responsibilities are quite different.
Okay.
The product manager has a broad responsibility. That covers the entire life cycle of the product.
The whole thing.
Yes, everything from coming up with the initial idea
Okay.
to doing market research to championing the product internally,
Uh-huh.
overseeing marketing and launch activities,
Yeah.
and ensuring a good user experience.
So they're really the advocate for the product.
They are. They're the ones explaining what the product is and why it's important.
So they're focused on the big picture, the long-term vision.
Yeah.
What about the project manager then?
Well, the project manager is more focused on the development phase of a specific project.
Okay.
Their job is to define the scope of the project, break it down into smaller tasks, create a detailed roadmap with timelines, and then oversee the implementation of that plan. Traditionally, the project manager's job was done once the product was ready to be launched.
So the product manager is in it for the long haul,
They are.
from the beginning to the end, while the project manager focuses on getting a specific version or feature built and released.
That's a good way to put it.
That makes it much clearer. So let's focus on the product manager.
You're okay.
What kind of role is it, really?
Yeah. And what makes a successful one? It's a role that needs a strong vision and a clear understanding of the problem the product is trying to solve. Without that, it's really hard to be successful.
It's like the foundation.
It is. Product managers work at the intersection of 3 key areas:
Okay.
understanding the user experience,
Uh-huh.
understanding product development, and having strong business sense.
So they need to be able to think about all 3 of those things at the same time.
Yes, they do.
That sounds like a challenge.
It can be.
Yeah.
One of the biggest challenges is balancing the needs of different stakeholders.
Yeah.
For example, engineers might want to focus on technical excellence. Sales might focus on features that bring in revenue right away,
Right.
and users might want it to be easy to use. The product manager has to navigate all of that, make tough choices,
Huh?
and make sure the product delivers value to both the users and the business.
So it's about finding that sweet spot.
It is. Another challenge is staying ahead of the curve.
Okay.
The market is constantly changing. New technologies, competitors, and customer preferences.
Right.
It requires constant learning and adaptation.
Absolutely. So it's a very dynamic role.
It is.
And a key part of their job is being the voice of the user.
Yeah. Among all the different stakeholders.
The engineers who are building it, the marketers who are promoting it, the salespeople who are talking to customers,
Right.
and the management who are making big decisions, they have to make sure everyone understands the needs, problems, and expectations of the users.
That's right.
And to do that, they need to be really good at gathering and understanding user feedback. What kind of things do they do to get that feedback?
Well, they might conduct in-depth user interviews to understand their motivations and frustrations,
Okay.
run surveys to collect data on preferences and satisfaction, conduct usability testing to see how people actually interact with the product, and even monitor social media and online forums to gauge sentiment and identify emerging needs or issues.
So they're using a variety of methods to get a complete picture.
They are. It's about being where the users are
Right.
and listening to what they have to say.
And it sounds like they need to be good researchers too.
Yes, Definitely.
Constantly analyzing the market.
That's right.
What research methods might they use?
So product managers are constantly researching their own product,
Mm.
looking at its strengths and weaknesses.
But they're also looking at the competition.
Yes, they analyze what their competitors are offering and what strategies they're using.
Okay.
This helps them ensure that what they're building truly meets customer needs
Okay.
and stands out from the crowd.
So they might use frameworks like Porter's 5 Forces.
They might to analyze the industry structure
Mm-hmm.
or conduct SWOT analyses
Mm-hmm.
to understand their own product's strengths and weaknesses and the opportunities and threats in the market. And they might do competitive benchmarking to compare their product directly against others.
So they're gathering all this data.
There, to make informed decisions.
Then they have to translate all those insights into an actual product.
Right.
How do they do that?
Well, they have to be able to communicate all that research and those user insights to the design and development teams.
Okay.
They might create detailed user stories, develop wireframes and prototypes,
Uh-huh.
and write product specifications that outline all the requirements.
That sounds like a lot of documentation.
It can be, but it's important to ensure everyone understands what needs to be built and why.
Okay.
This leads to better products that are more likely to succeed.
So it's about communication and collaboration.
It is. The product manager's ultimate goal is to drive innovation and strong sales.
And it all comes back to understanding the core problem the product is solving
Definitely.
and clearly explaining what makes it unique and valuable.
Right.
Without that, it's easy for a product to get lost in the sea of other products.
That's true.
And I noticed that successful product managers often come from diverse backgrounds.
They do.
Yeah.
That's because the role touches on so many different aspects of the product lifecycle, from vision and research to design, development, marketing, sales, launch, support, and even eventually winding down the product.
It's a very multifaceted role.
It is.
So we've explored the what and the why of product management.
Uh-huh.
Let's talk about the how.
Okay.
What does a typical workflow look like for a product manager?
Well, there are several best practices that effective product managers tend to follow.
Okay.
It often starts with consumer research.
Okay.
This is about understanding your target customer and the market. You need to know the market size, identify your competitors,
Uh-huh.
and stay up to date on market trends. They also create something called an ideal buyer persona.
What's that?
It's a fictional representation of your ideal customer, outlining their demographics, psychographics, motivations, and pain points.
So it's like a profile of your perfect customer. You're trying to understand them as a real person.
Yeah, their likes, dislikes, and how they find and use information.
So you can't build a product for someone you don't understand.
Exactly.
What comes after understanding your target audience?
The next step is to identify the problem.
Okay.
Real innovation often comes from seeing a problem that your target market is facing
Uh-huh.
and finding a way to solve it. By looking at your buyer persona and asking questions like, what are their biggest concerns?
Okay.
What are they searching for online? What frustrations do they have? You can start to uncover those pain points.
And that helps you figure out what the product needs to do.
It does. It's also important to define the problem clearly so you can communicate the value of the product and get buy-in from stakeholders.
So everyone is on the same page.
Exactly.
Okay, you've got your customer profile and you've identified a problem. What's next?
Next comes brainstorming.
Okay.
This is where the product manager works with engineers, marketers, and even potential customers to generate ideas for how to solve the problem.
So it's a collaborative process?
Very much so.
Yeah.
They might do in-depth customer interviews,
Mm-hmm.
asking questions to really understand how customers feel about the problem. They also engage internal stakeholders,
Okay.
using the defined problem as the starting point. The goal is to encourage everyone to share ideas.
Even bad ones.
Well, even ideas that seem bad at first can sometimes spark something truly innovative.
That's interesting. And of course, they document all the ideas.
They do.
So nothing gets lost.
Right.
So you've got all these potential solutions. What happens then?
Well, then you move on to building the concept.
Okay.
This is where you take all those ideas and narrow them down to a single, strong product direction.
You're choosing the best path forward.
We are. It might be the most promising idea,
Okay.
or a combination of several ideas. Then you define the product specifications. What will the product look like?
Mm-hmm.
How will it solve the problem?
Yeah.
What are the essential features? And how will you measure its effectiveness?
So it's getting really specific.
It is. At this stage, the product manager might create a prototype
Okay.
or guide the development team in the early stages.
You've got your concept and your specifications. What's next?
Next, you establish a product roadmap.
Okay.
This is your strategic plan. It outlines the stages of development and launch. It includes target dates, objectives, and KPIs.
So dates, goals, and metrics.
Exactly. It will include deadlines, specific tasks, who's responsible for what,
Aw.
and how you'll measure success.
So you've got your roadmap, but you can't build every feature at once, right?
Right.
How do you decide what to focus on?
That's where prioritizing features comes in.
Okay.
You have to decide where to put your resources. You consider how much each feature contributes to the product's value, how well it addresses user needs, and how many resources it needs.
So it's about making strategic choices.
Yes. Sometimes it's better to prioritize features that have a bigger impact,
Okay.
even if they take longer to develop.
Rather than going for quick wins that don't matter as much in the long run.
That's right. There are frameworks like the Moscow method or RICE scoring
Okay.
that can help with this process.
So you're focusing on the most valuable features.
Exactly.
The plan is in place, the features are prioritized, now it's time to actually build it.
Right. That's the implement the plan stage.
Okay.
The product manager might give instructions to the development team, or if they have the skills, they might get directly involved, like writing user stories or reviewing code.
So they're really hands-on in this stage.
They can be.
And there are different ways to implement the plan.
Yeah. Like Agile and Waterfall.
Can you explain the difference?
Sure. Agile is iterative.
Okay.
They build in cycles, get feedback, and make adjustments along the way. Waterfall is more linear. The product is released at the end, after a final approval.
So the initial version of the product is out there. Is the product manager's job done?
No, not at all. The final stage is rapid prototyping and testing.
Okay.
This continues even after the product launch. They have to see how the product performs in the real world, find areas for improvement, gather user feedback, fix any bugs, and collaborate with teams to implement those improvements.
So it's an ongoing process of refinement.
It is.
One thing that really stood out to me was the variety of roles within product management. It's not just one job, is it?
It's definitely not. There are generalist product managers
Right.
who oversee a product's entire life cycle, but there are also more specialized roles
Okay.
that focus on specific aspects or types of products.
That makes sense as things become more complex.
It does.
What are some of those specialized roles?
Well, one is the growth product manager.
Okay.
They focus on using the product to drive sales and growth. They're often found in companies that have a product-led growth strategy,